you're a beginner and you want to start writing poetry and express yourself in a beautiful artistic way, this video is exactly for you. Hi, my name is Leon, and in this video I'm going to show you how to actually start writing poetry, how it works, and just use the poetry to be yourself. I'm going to show you the exact steps that I take to write poems and how I've discovered it for myself. It's actually really easy. Like, trust me, when I wrote my first poem, I felt so amazing. I never would have thought that someone like me is capable of actually writing a poem. So after grabbing your little journal, you're going to take your pen and you're gonna write down exactly how you feel. You have many emotions. It might be a turmoil, it might be a big chaos of emotions stirred up. Those emotions, those things, you're gonna write down. You're gonna write down what you want your poem to be about. What is this feeling, this epiphany that you've been having lately? What is this thing that you want to put on paper? Because through writing things down, you're just gonna get your mind clear. Your mind is gonna be like free, because you might overthink a lot in your head, or in your head you might be thinking about this and that, and at the end of the day, you're not gonna get anywhere if you don't write it down. You can be as vulnerable, as private, and as intimate as you want to be, because this is your poetry and you do not have to be afraid of anyone judging you or if anyone seeing this. Like, whether you're writing this poetry for yourself or you want to publish it, it's totally up to you. But I just think to myself every time, okay, I'm literally just being myself. This poetry is an extension of you being yourself, if you get what I mean. And you see, as humans, we just sometimes try to suppress our emotions. We're like, I don't want to feel this right now. I'm not going to express my emotions because I'm afraid of being judged, or I'm afraid of having this happen, or other people think this of me. And at some point, you realize that it doesn't matter at all. It really doesn't. The only thing that matters is feeling your feelings. You should never get numb or be like, okay, I don't want to feel this right now. It is totally normal. If you're like, oh, I hate that feeling, I've been feeling depressed, I've been feeling shitty, it is okay. It is valid for you to feel those feelings. And through poetry, you can get those feelings on paper. This is exactly what Taylor Swift, the chairman of the Tortured Poets Department herself, has said about poetry. If you write those things down, you're gonna feel so much better afterwards. Not just because you've got your mind clear, but because your emotions are getting out there. If you just suppress your emotions and you keep them stuck in your body, our body stores them. And our body at some point is gonna create a traumatic cycle of those emotions just being stuck. You might develop something really weird in your body. It could be a disease, it could be something. If you don't get your emotions out there and you do not feel what has to be felt. And after pouring the emotions out of your head into the paper, you can actually start to kind of plan the poem. You have to think of certain artistic things, you have to think of certain metaphors that will then be able to really describe what you're feeling or what you want to express. And I strongly believe that in order to get those metaphors, in order to actually know, okay, this is how I'm gonna do that, you need to channel your inner creativity. This is where your sacral chakra is going to come into play. This is your center of creation. You have to now look at all the words, look at all the physical things that you know of in your world, and then kind of set a comparison. Set those metaphors in between your feelings and those things that you use to describe your feelings. You have to think of it, okay, if I'm going to read this in a month, am I going to love this? Am I going to love what I'm writing? The answer is yes. You can just be like, I ate this poem up. So the way that you channel your inner creativity is you kind of just look at your surroundings. You can look at the things that you know of. You can look at things you love, things that you've just kind of been inspired by, and simply look at those things as if it were part of your poem. If you were to describe your feeling in a metaphorical way, how would you do it? Think of certain attributes, think of certain actions, think of certain aspects in the world that you think would kind of just fit the situation. What would be the best way to describe what you are feeling? You can look at nature, for example. You can look at actions that people do. You can always get inspired, but remember, get inspired, but do not copy. Because if you copy other things or just get way too heavily inspired, you're no longer being yourself. That poem would not be an expression of yourself, but it would simply just be a copy, a cheap copy of someone else. And that is kind of like the death of your originality. That is the death of your creativity. So if you want to be creative and write down something that you really love and something that kind of even fulfills you and makes you feel passionate about what you do, then you have to come up with your own shit. And trust me, that's gonna take some time. I needed 3 days to write my first poem, but then when I was finished, I was just like, wow, I love this so much. Like, I've been reading it to myself for the next week every day because I was so in love with my own poem. And when you're in love with your own poem, which is just an expression of yourself, you also love yourself. Poetry can be a beautiful way to express your own self-love. You might even need a few pages to come up with all that shit and write all of that down. But when you're done, you're gonna be so happy. And it's gonna be a little crazy maybe. You might even not come up with anything at first, but once you channel that inner creativity the way that I've just explained it, you're gonna come up with something really amazing. And remember that this is not the actual poem itself yet. That is just the beginning of your poem. Then at the end, when you're done with all of that, you're gonna put that into your poem. On something I also forgot to mention is that you need to determine whether you want your poem to be a rhymed poem or just a regular poem. Once you intuitively feel and know that your poem is actually ready, that first draft is done, there is nothing more to be done differently, or there's nothing more that you want to add, that is when you're going to open up the next page. So the final step that you need to do now is you're going to perfectionize that poem. You have your final draft, you've got all the things written down, and now you need to actually just look at the things. Okay, what can I phrase nicer? What words might be a little better? And at some point, you're just going to see intuitively, okay, I think I'm happy with the poem. I think this is the truest form of self-expression I can achieve through this poem. That's when you can just take another page and actually write down the entire poem without all the scrappy shit nearby, and take your nice pen or your typewriter or your computer. Just write it down. You're basically gonna be done. That way you're just perfectionizing it. That way you're just making it look beautiful. And you're just gonna be filled with such awe and such love for yourself and for this poem, because you know, yes, I have been able to really get this artistry within myself out there on paper. I was able to express myself creatively. I was able to channel my inner feelings and put them on that paper. And once you've written your first poem and you really love it, you're gonna write down a second poem. You're gonna write down a third poem. You're gonna write down many poems. And at some point, you're just gonna fall in love with poetry. And I'm on that way right now. I'm kind of falling in love with poetry. I've got this lovely poetry journal right here. I love the font. I have not really written much in it yet, but I have written quite some poems, and yeah, that's just how it looks. Yeah, and there you are. Your poem is basically done. You're gonna love it if you love it, and if you don't love it, you can just write down a different poem until you do love it. But remember, there's no such thing as perfectionism when it comes to poetry. Your poem could always be better. It could always be nicer. There could always be better words that you could have used. But that's so dumb. Like, at some point, you just have to be fine with what you have written down, because if you constantly try to perfectionize everything to that crazy extent, it's not gonna be nice anymore, but it's just gonna be fake. What I meant by perfectionizing the poem earlier is that you need to perfectionize it in a subtle way, that you just kind of like replace some things that you might not like and just paraphrase them. So today I want to end the video with the quote of the professor from the movie Dead Poets Society. He said, "We do not read and write poetry because it's cute. But we read and write poetry because we are members of the human race, and the human race is filled with passion and love." I believe this quote to be so beautiful, because poetry is not just about doing something cute, doing it because it's trendy, doing it because Taylor Swift is doing it. It's because you're doing it out of passion. You need to find ways or hobbies, activities to really validate yourself and your own well-being. And this is what poetry does for me and many other people on this planet too. And if I'm being honest, it's just really nice if someone asks what you like to do in your free time and you can just be like, oh, I actually am a poet. I think it is so cool to say that, isn't it? If you have found any value in this video, or if this video helped you, you can check out my other videos about other topics that you would probably also love. And you know, just feel free to subscribe to my channel. Leave a comment, because I would love to have some feedback, or if you've got any video suggestions, just leave them down below and tell me what you want to make a video about. Thank you so much for watching, and also, it's my birthday, so say happy birthday. I love you guys so much. I am very grateful for my audience, and I absolutely love the growth and everything that you guys have told me lately. See you in the next video at Leon's Place.